3. Overall, we did quite well on these. Now, we're not looking for imperfects yet because this was from a couple or a few weeks ago. Kai aipen alte ha angelas curio. Okay, so kai is and aipen is he, she, or it said. And then we've got alte with Yoda subscript. So, and he, she, or it said to her, and then our subject comes a little bit later. We know it's a subject because it has the article. Generally, if we have like two nouns, there's a noun or pronoun, and there's a noun. The one that has the article is generally the one that will be the subject. And that also tips us off the fact that this is a dative case, that this will not be the subject. And then the subject, angelos, or angels, modified by kurio, so it's of the Lord. So we've got, and the angel of the Lord said to her, Agar. That threw us off a little bit. That would be Hagar, or Agar, however you want to pronounce it. Hagar, where, parue, that's from paruamai, and it's the second singular, so you are going. Where, let's just rephrase it because it's a question. Where are you going? And this would be a statement here, a direct quote. The angel of the Lord said to her, Hagar, where are you going? You guys have any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Let's look at the next one. We've got our subject right here. Ha Jesus. So Jesus, lege, says, altois. When we see the Yoda towards the end there, we can think dative. This is dative plural. So Jesus says to them, pistuete, from pistuo, second plural. It's got the second plural ending there. You all believe. So let's start writing here. Jesus says to them, let's put it in quotation marks, do you believe that dunamai, I am able, tuta poiesai, this to do. Do you believe that I'm able to do this? Sometimes it gives me this quotation mark. It's the Spanish one, but now we got it right. Do you believe that I am able to do this? Legusin auto. They say to him, yes, Lord. Like that. Jesus says to them, do you believe that I'm able to do this? They say to him, yes, Lord. So just to review, we've got 24 verbal endings now that hopefully we have memorized. And this is the third plural from Lego, which means I say. So they say. And we've got another pronoun with a Yoda subscript, so to him. And yes, Lord. All right, so let's look at the third one. Hoi pantes. Okay, so that's pantes is all. If it has the article like this, it's probably the subject. And then we've got gar. So we'll start with gar for hoi pontes, literally the all. We don't say it in English though. We just, if we're talking about everybody, we could say for all, or we could say for everyone. E auton. Okay, that kind of looks like autos, only it has the genitive plural ending, and it also starts with an epsilon. When you see a form of autos that starts with an epsilon, it's the intensive or sometimes the reflexive form of autos. So instead of him, it would be himself, or instead of them, it would be themselves. Here, I think it's going to take on a slight modification, but we have for all, zetusin, they seek. For all seek ta e auton. Okay. Anybody recognize what ta is?
I would just, at first I would think it's a definite article, but it's not. It's some kind of pronoun.
Okay, good, Tim. It is functioning like a pronoun, but it actually is the definite article. It's the definite article functioning as a pronoun.
Would it be the neuter first, or the neuter nominative accusative case?
It would
Plural?
be. Yep. Yep, it would be the, let's see, for all seek, okay, so it would be the nominative plural, I'm sorry, the accusative plural, neuter. It's the article, and it's functioning like a relative pronoun, which I mentioned in the video. That happens all the time. In Greek, for everyone seeks the things of themselves. That's the idea. The things, and since it's neuter plural, we kind of get the idea that it's things. The things of themselves. Not ta, the things of Jesus Christ. For all seek the things of themselves, not the things of Jesus Christ. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes?
Yes.
It's just anything makes sense, sure. Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, the article can throw us off pretty easily, but if you remember the forms and the fact that it often functions like a relative pronoun, you'll be in pretty good shape.
That article, it's just kind of hanging there in midair. It's not attached to any word, which kind of gives it away
Yes.
as having a different usage.
It's a great observation. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, Grammar Quiz 20. Let's take a look at that. This was another one that most of the class pretty much aced. You did very well. So I'm just going to translate through it. It'll be familiar to you, I think. Pantes is all. And then we've got, I'm going to maximize this a little bit, make it a little bigger. Okay. So all, and then we've got pistususin. This has the sigma on it. And when we see a sigma at the end of the stem, what tense are we dealing with?
Future.
Exactly, future. So all will believe. All will believe in him. And elusontai hoi chromaioi. I think I misspelled that. It should be like chromaioi. All will believe in him, and now we've got one of those verbs that changes roots when it changes tenses. It's the future form of erkomai. And then we've got the hoi chromai, the Romans. The Romans will come, and okay, then we've got a form of airo, but it has the sigma there. Oops, if I can highlight it like that. The Romans will come and will take away our place. Most of the class did really well with this translation. That's how it would be translated. Okay, so with the present tense, you know, that's where we start, and that's where we start memorizing the verbal endings too. And then we studied the future, and now we are into the imperfect. And so with the imperfect, we learned the other 12 endings because it's a secondary case, or I'm sorry, secondary. Thank you, secondary endings. So let's do a little parsing. Who would volunteer to be the first person?
Sure, I'll go.
All right.
So we have second person singular, future, active, indicative, from baptizo, and the inflected meaning is he was baptizing.
Okay. Good. You got the translation right. And that's the main thing. We parse so we can translate. You got it right. Now, based on this, you're saying, okay, so it's past tense and it's continuous. Let's change something over here. Right there.
Oh yeah, of course.
There you go. Yeah, this would be the imperfect because it has the augment and it has the secondary ending. Nice work. Okay, Elton, you're up. You can take eperoton.
Okay, eperoton. So it is Omicron nu Omega nu. So I'll go with first person, singular, imperfect. It's active, indicative from Epirotao. Is it? Yeah.
Yes. Good job.
Okay, and it would be I was asking.
Okay, nice job. Yeah, what we have going on here is if you look at the lexical form, what is it? Eperotao there. Okay, this is a compound verb, and that means that the first part of the verb is a preposition. So you said it's an imperfect, which means it has to have an augment. It does. But the augment comes after the prepositional part of the word. If you guys remember that on the video?
Yes.
Yep. And, well, this part of the word already starts with an epsilon. So what happens is it lengthens. When there's a vowel, it will lengthen. So this is a trickier form. It's compound, so the augment happens after the preposition. And it starts, the stem part of the verb, well, it starts with a vowel, so that lengthens. And one other thing that's kind of weird is that it ends in own. So we've kind of trained our minds at this point to think genitive plural. Well, it's a verb, so it can't be genitive plural. But that's because the stem vowel is alpha, and then the connecting vowel would be omicron, and the ending is nu. And that goes back to the contract rules. When alpha meets omicron, it'll become an omega. So all of those things, it's a very regular verb, but it applies some of the rules that we're not too used to seeing. But you parsed exactly right, and yep, that would be the translation. Nice job. Okay, Caleb, you're up. Asan.
Asan is the third person plural imperfect form Amy. That
They were. Very good. So imperfect, and we already know it's indicative. Everything's been indicative to this point. And what are we going to say for voice?
Oh, it's Amy. So would it be a deponent?
What's that?
Is Amy deponent? I forget.
Let's see. Amy is technically not deponent, not in the present tense. If we think about it in the, I'm reviewing it in my mind, the imperfect tense. Technically, it's not. It's a weird verb, and we'll talk about me verbs later in the year. But technically, it's not. So we just say it's active.
Okay.
Yeah. In the future tense, it does become if I'm remembering straight. Yeah, in the future tense it does become deponent, but it will not be in the present and the imperfect. Okay, nice job. They were. And back to you, Tim. Eparuomen.
Um, it's first person,
Okay.
singular, imperfect, deponent,
Good.
indicative, from peruamai. The inflected meaning would be I was going.
Okay, nice job. It's got the main ending, which tips us off that it's a secondary ending. Again, the key here is just remembering the lexical form of the vocab words that we're studying, you know? So we just got to look at the word. What does that look like? Paruamai. Exactly. It's got the augment. So yeah, it's first singular, imperfect, deponent because it doesn't actually have an active way of forming. It's always going to have that middle passive ending. But more of an active meaning. So I was going. Nice. Back to, I think we're back to Elton.
Yes, sir. So, Susi, we have the Usi ending, which would make it third person plural,
Good.
and because it has a sigma, it'd be future, active, indicative, and it comes from exo, which means to have, so they will have.
Third plural. Okay. Yeah, this looks like it's a future form of echo. So we got a third plural, future, active, indicative, and echo. There we go. And what was the translation?
They will have.
They will have. All right, good job. Caleb.
Alright, so this is the third person plural indicative, passive indicative of baptizo. So it means they were being baptized by him.
Okay, so they were being baptized. And how did you finish it?
By, or I guess technically on account of them.
Good.
By.
Yeah, by him is good. Yep. Nice job. Okay, back to Tim.
Ook, no or not, acrinomatha, from crino, I judge.
Right.
Imperfect, metha, first person plural. We were judging, we were not judging. So it would be imperfect. Is this a deponent?
Crino's
No.
not.
No.
Yeah, in the vocab it's crino.
Right.
So we could just put middle if we're not exactly sure how it's being used right now. Middle passive. No, it's indicative. Yeah, so we said it was from crino. So how do we want to translate it?
We were not being judged.
Yeah, we were not being judged. Good. Yep. Back to you, Elton.
Okay, so we're translating this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I see gar, which is for.
Good.
For if. Epestuete, which comes from pistuo, which means
Right.
believing, and then that's Moses for if. So it's ete, which would be you, and it's imperfect. For if you were believing Moses,
Good.
pistu ete, which would make it present because it doesn't have the epsilon. You would believe,
Okay, right. It doesn't have the augment here.
right?
So the question is, pistuo. There is a little tense formative right after this.
Oh, right. You would believe me.
Okay, that seems to be the force here. Technically, this is a future verb, but we already know the context and the sense, and I think you're probably reading that into it, and that's fine. We've got, if you were believing Moses, you would believe, you will believe me. But
Right.
sometimes the tenses are used more broadly than we sometimes would like to say in first year Greek. Say, well, it's future, so it's got to be translated with will. Generally, yes, but the tenses are a little more flexible than that. So literally here, if you were believing Moses, you will believe me. But that's, in English, that sounds a little awkward. I think we have the idea. In order to believe in Jesus, they would have to believe Moses.
Yeah, it's kind of like contrasting. In the context, is contrasting believing Moses and them. So
Yes.
that's why I said would.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's a good translation. Another way, it does to me sound a little awkward. If you were believing Moses, I think most translations probably opt for something like this. Let me write it here. For if you had believed Moses, you would believe me. And that pretty much nails the idea, and that's good grammar and good parallelism in English. But something that we will see repeatedly is sometimes to get the translation to sound good in English, you have to be a little more dynamic. If you want to be very literal, you can, but just keep in mind the tenses are a little more flexible than sometimes meets the eye. And we also want translations that sound decent. So those things mean that sometimes our translations have to be a little more dynamic. It doesn't mean that, oh, we're swerving from a literal translation. No, we're being very literal, but we don't want to murder our English either. Do you guys follow that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Elton, that's a good translation, the one you provided. Okay, Caleb. Here we go.
Alright. I cannot today. Ellie. Are we doing? So, but elegant. Same. I guess the kanos would be he, so it would be function as the personal pronoun there.
Yes, good observation. Kanos is technically the demonstrative pronoun that, but many times it weakens in force and it is just translated as a personal pronoun. In this case, he.
Harry. To I'm reading off my workbook here, so I have to get that's temple. He was saying about the temple. Nomatos. It's
Okay, good. We might say he was talking. Yeah, there you go. He was talking about the temple of his body. Or we could say he was speaking concerning the temple of his body. But this is correct. This is the idea. Okay, good. Again, you guys are translating correctly, but when we see some verb in the imperfect tense, which means it will have the augment and it will have secondary endings, generally the way we provide it is with a form of the being verb is plus the ing form of the verb. Was, and then whatever the verb is, plus ing. There will be some times when that doesn't quite work. You might translate it more as what's called an aorist, which is just with the ed ending, like he talked about, but that we want to prefer this form of translation when we can. And if it just doesn't work in the context, then we might opt for the undefined past tense, which is the aorist, which we're going to learn in another week. Nice job, Caleb. So we'll do 2 more and then see if you guys have any questions. Back to Tim.
Tauta, panta, hoi, pharisaioi. I think the first letter should be an eta rather than an alpha. So you have a secondary ending.
Good.
No. Okay. But they were hearing, and they would be the Pharisees, since they are in the plural nominative, so they're the subject.
Good.
All panta tauta this. The Pharisees were hearing all this.
Okay. So is tauta and panta singular or plural?
They're plural.
So instead of this, we can say these. And if something is understood here, we probably will say things. Just like we saw, so tauta is the neuter plural demonstrative pronoun. Oh, not trying to do that. There we go. Tauta. And we saw a little above here the ta. Where was the ta? Here. When we see ta or tauta, a lot of times we have to include the understood noun, which is things. So we'll do that here. Nice work. Okay, Elton.
Okay, so agapa de o Jesus. So Jesus as an article should be Jesus. Agape is in the imperfect. So Jesus was loving. Martha, I put a comma in it. Her sister, from Adelphos,
Oh, good.
and Lazarus. So yeah, her sister, comma, and Lazarus.
Okay.
Just, yeah.
Okay, nice. What do you want to do with the de here?
Oh, it's just and?
Probably.
And Jesus? Yeah, just and Jesus.
And Jesus was loving Martha. And then we've got Kai, again, over here. And then we've got
Would it
Kai.
be-
One more
Sorry,
here.
go ahead.
Here. I was just noting how we have 2 Kais here. And we want to include them in the translation if we can.
Okay.
So that'll have to do with whether or not we provide the commas.
Oh, right. Yeah, because to what I've learned with grammar, if you have a list like that, you tag the and to the last object. So that's why I put
Yes.
the comma.
Yes.
So that, yeah. But you could, yeah, like you're right. You said it could be Martha and her sister and Lazarus
Right.
without the comma. Correct.
Right. Right. So again, it's like, well, unless we're really murdering the English, we'll stick with the word-for-word translation from Greek. Now, if there was a longer list here, Elton, if there were 4 or more, I don't know if you'd see all of the kais, maybe. And then you'd have to determine what would be the best way to translate it. And if you eliminate the word and from your translation, if you're changing the text at all. Yeah, I don't think you're changing the sense at all, but you're changing perhaps the flow a little bit, and then you'd have to consider that. But since it sounds fine here, and since we can do it this way, we will. Jesus was loving Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Just to keep the words in there as much as possible. Kai and Kai.
Okay.
Yep. But you're on the right track with English. I mean, generally we try to stick with whatever's most concise. It's a little wordy here, but I don't think we're violating any great principles of English, so we'll keep them. Did you guys have any specific questions over the homework?
I
I'm
did.
good.
You did, Tim?
I did.
Okay, good.
We did work in the review, in the workbook, review number 4.
Okay, what page was that?
So I'm looking at page 81. Now, looking specifically at the parsing.
Okay.
And I have a question about 7 and 8. Nosatai and Asantai.
All right.
So I did these, and then I went to Mounce's online answer key and looked them up. And he says that Genosatai is in the deponent voice.
Yeah.
Throws me for a loop because I learned it as Genosko, which is not, so I learned it in its lexical
Right.
form, in the present form. So how is it deponent?
Yeah, that's a great observation. So let's parse this out first. We have a third singular. This will be future active deponent from Ginosko, and it means he will know or she will know, maybe. Is this what you have for the parsing?
I had actually translated it with the middle passive, he will be known. But yeah, that's
Okay.
basically what I have.
Okay. What happens with a handful of verbs is that they change deponency when they change tenses. And there's no intuitive way to know when this happens. It just takes time. And you just have to memorize them that way. Now, in first year, I'm not going to recommend that you guys try to memorize all of these. But what happens is you need to be aware of it. Because when you come to let's say a word like nosatai in the text, you might say, well, wait a second. I remember learning gnosko, and I remember that the root is gno. So it looks like it's from gno, but that ending's a little weird because it's like a middle passive ending. But if you try to, in context, if you try to read it with a middle or reflexive translation, it's going to sound funny because it's actually, or it probably will sound kind of funny because it's deponent. So what you just need to be aware of is that this can happen, and what happens is the deponency changes when the tense changes. Gnosko is not deponent, but in the future it is. There's only a handful of verbs that do that. Most verbs don't. So if you memorize it as an active, it's active in, or it could be active or middle passive in all the tenses. But there is a handful where the deponency changes when it changes tenses. And that's what's happening here, Tim.
All right. With the Santai, he said its voice is middle deponent. So he listed it as both middle and deponent.
Okay.
It comes from I, me, third person plural future, middle deponent, indicative.
Yeah.
I got they will be.
Right. This is a future form of in me that it does become deponent in the future. This is another example of that.
Why did he list this one as both middle and deponent? You know?
I don't know. I don't know because it's just deponent. There's not going to be times when this is kind of a reflexive sense. I don't think it ever has a reflexive sense. Or a middle. When I say reflexive, I mean a classical middle sense, where the subject is doing the action, but the consequences of the action come back on the subject. The being verbs never act like that, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know why he did that. That might just be a typo on his part.
It's a typo.
Yeah. So the lesson learned here is that sometimes deponency changes when the tense changes. If there's a question, you can always look up the verb in a lexicon and see how it's listed in that tense, and if it says it's deponent or not. But I don't recommend that you try to memorize all of them.
One thing I've noticed with those verbs that change deponency in the present
Yeah,
or in the different tenses,
right.
that insofar as we've seen, only ones that do that are the ones that actually change their stem. Like gnosko is gamma yoda nu
Okay.
in the present, but gamma
Right.
nu.
That's a good, yeah. And then you've got apsomai. That changes. It's from horao, and it means I will see. Let's see, I'm thinking about erkomai. That's deponent in the present and the future, but in the past tense. Trying to remember what it was. Ain. It's not. I don't think it's deponent. But that one does change as well. That changes roots. Yeah, there might be a connection there, Caleb. There might be a connection there. So that's a good observation. I can't confirm it either way if it's always that way, but the ones that are coming to my mind are the ones that change roots. So there might be a connection. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay, that might be something worth looking into. If Caleb, if you want to find out or maybe look into that a little more and let us know, that might be helpful information.
I just thought it made it easier for memory work.
Right.
Because those verbs are the very ones that already require a little more.
Right. Right. If we could lump those two together, that would be nice. I'm not sure we can, but for a lot of them, at least for a lot of the ones we've learned so far, there is that overlap.
And there are some verbs that change the stem and don't change deponents.
Right.
We've already looked at some of those. But
Yep.
If we can just focus on the ones that do change the stem to memorize whether they change deponent, it just made it easier for me.
Yep. That's good. Any other questions, guys?